a big panel to talk about them because we have three of the filmmakers with us. But before we do the Q&A, we know some of you are still coming in from the facilities. I want to introduce again the director of Ebertfest, Nate Cohen. Roger and I start talking about the film festival as soon as we leave. On the Sunday that we leave Ebertfest, we start talking about the next year. And then Roger and Nate start putting together all the movies. And then for all the other details, we have Mary Susan Britz who starts working on them. Mary Susan, come out, please. And some time ago, we started doing something at Ebertfest that you don't see at other film festivals. We give out the golden thumb. And so we have three to give out today. First of all, let's have the director, Lee Isaac Chung, come out. And with them, the producers, Jenny Lunn and Sam Anderson. Come out, please. Okay, for Isaac. Thank you. Roger thanks you, the golden thumb.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
Jenny Lunn, the golden thumb. Thank you. Sam Anderson, the golden thumb. For that beautiful, beautiful movie. And I have to tell you, we had one filmmaker who said the only reason he agreed, he said, was very busy shooting another movie. The only reason he came to Ebertfest, he had to get one of those golden thumbs. He saw one on someone's desk and he wanted one too. Whatever it takes. The rest of our panel, we're going to take these from you backstage, and you can receive them backstage. The rest of our panel, we have Omar Moore, one of our far-flung correspondents from London, now in San Francisco, Omar Moore. And we will also be joined by Sung-Young Cho from South Korea. And Nate will moderate. Mary Susan, will you help me take these back, please? Thank you. We'll keep these safe for you.
Shirley can ship them too.
Thank you. Let's just go ahead and sit down. Maybe you two guys can go on the other end, and we'll put these three folks in the middle, and I'll sit here on this end. And we have three microphones, so we'll pass them back and forth. So, how did you come to this film?
That's an interesting way to put the question, because it feels like it's more that the opportunity for the film came to me. Because I wasn't really wanting to just go to Rwanda and make a film. It was never a big ambition of mine to do something like this. But it was just the fact that we were going to Rwanda as volunteers. My wife volunteers with this Christian organization in Rwanda. And to go with her, you know, I wanted to offer something of worth. And really the idea was that looking at all the cinema that's coming from Rwanda, it seems to be, yes, coming from the West, but not only just from the West, it's coming from a very Western perspective. So in teaching cinema, we wanted to do something in which cinema belongs to the people there in Rwanda. So I remember one of the early rules that Sam and I came up with when we were first preparing the film was that we wanted to make sure that this is a film that would work for a Rwandan audience, that they wouldn't see it and think, oh, this is a film about us for Westerners to see, but that they would see it and they'd say, this is a film for us, this is our film. And for me, that's, yeah, to answer your question in a very long way, I feel like we just fell into that somehow. Somehow that was just presented to us, and we just decided to keep going further and further with the idea until we finally had this film.
And the story, where did that come from? How much of it did you write, and how much did the actors write, and how much did the people of Rwanda write?
I don't know, Sam, do you want to?
Well, I think the original idea for the story was something that the basic storyline was something that Isaac came up with, and I believe it came from reading some accounts of similar situations in contemporary Rwanda or in post-genocide Rwanda about people who were faced with the question of in one way or another confronting or meeting again the people that they thought were responsible for the deaths of their family. As far as the specific story itself, we worked in dialogue for a number of months before going to Rwanda, and came up with a more detailed outline, basically a breakdown of the scenes and something that would give a structure to the story and to the conflicts within the story. But in terms of the scenes themselves, those were worked out on set. We would, driving to the set every morning, we would talk about what we were going to shoot that day, and just kind of come up with some different ideas to push the story along, and then Isaac would work with the actors to put that into their own words, to figure out whether the ideas that we had talked about already were natural or realistic, and then kind of work from there. So the actors were the ones who actually put the dialogue into their own words, and in a lot of different places contributed the smaller details to make it more realistic.
So did you direct them then in English, or?
Yeah, none of the actors spoke English, so we had, you know, when I first got there, Jenny and I, we were teaching a photography and filmmaking course, and there were two students in the class who were very good at English. One of them, it was because his family had lived in Uganda and had returned to Rwanda after the genocide, so he was brought up speaking English. And another student, he was just gifted with languages. He speaks French and English. The way the wind was blowing in the trees, this may sound really strange, and the way that sometimes it's very random, you know. And for that film, when I moved up the camera to the tree, right at the end, all of a sudden some wind started blowing. And to me, that was an amazing moment. And I didn't know if I was going to use the wind blowing through the trees at any point. And I don't know if I feel like it's a metaphor or something, but it definitely was significant for me. Just a sense I got of, you know, this mysterious wind that's blowing at times in Rwanda. And for me, it was also hopeful. So that's kind of why I put that in. Otherwise, we had many takes of that scene, and if the wind didn't blow in the trees at the end of the scene, then I probably would have used the other takes where I'm just focused on the actors.
Yes, in fact, I noticed some subtle tensions in the first half of the movie, and maybe from the eyes of outsiders like me, it is kind of subtle, but it seems that two characters in the movie, that kind of feeling is quite apparent to him without talking about that.
Oh, thank you. The feeling of
a kind of recognizing each other, kind of, yes. We can usually outside some kind of foreign in case of foreign audience, we can kind of can tell difference between how can I tell between the two tribes, but these two characters. Later they say, I instantly recognize him, kind of. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because in Rwanda you don't talk about someone being Hutu or Tutsi anymore. That's considered to be very taboo to even say that. So, even when we were casting, I really liked Jeff, the person who ended up playing Ngabo, and I actually cast somebody else to play that character, and he quit maybe 4 days into production. No, 3 days into production. I don't usually count those 3 days in the 11 days because we had to start all over again once that individual quit. And I always felt that Jeff and Eric, who plays Sangwa, they always were very close and were friends, and they looked like brothers to me. And everyone would even say these two act like brothers and they look like brothers. And then one day somebody said to me, but the interesting thing is that I think they're from the two different tribes, or not tribes, but ethnic groups that they had formed. So in casting them, it was interesting to have them. They're good friends, and then to have to, I guess, build up the conflict between them as we're shooting. Yeah, it was kind of a challenge, but also I thought the basis of them actually being friends first helped us quite a bit to make that believable.
Something else I just want to mention, then we'll open it up to questions. I actually believe I saw Africa in this film. I mean, I've been to Africa. I sort of know what it looks like, but I so rarely see Africa in motion pictures. And it seems to me that you captured it and you brought it to me. Did you do that consciously, or it just happened?
No, thank you for. I've been thinking about that recently because I've often heard, that this is it seems very authentic, but normally that's coming from a Western audience, and I feel like even I don't fully and never will fully know how authentic the film really is and where the limitations are.
It doesn't look like Blood Diamond, for example.
Yeah, I guess the point was that I'm always very happy to hear that, and because it's something that we tried very hard to do, but at the same time recognizing that we don't know if how true that is, but we hope that it is true. Yeah.
Well, I prefer to believe your Africa as you give it to us. I think it's extraordinary.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to do this question thing slightly differently this time, since we can't actually see you from up here. Just raise your hands, and then a mic wrangler will come to you, and then when you get the mic, he'll tell us where you are, and then you can ask your question. So we put it in the hands of our wranglers. Assuming we have some questions.
Balcony.
Okay, but from the balcony?
Could you talk about how the dialogue between the father and the son was developed?
Sure. Sam, do you want to tackle that?
Specifically, I think, I mean, we wanted to, the idea was to set up the idea that really it was the tension between the father and the son that originally had led the son to leave home and to run away, but that in returning he's led back by a very strong desire to find reconciliation, and so in developing the dialogue, we wanted to think of small ways where that could come out. I think the very first scene is the father. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
How much of the actual wording was developed by you, and how much was developed by the by the actors?
Okay. Actually, I think most of the wording itself was developed by the actors. The ideas behind the wording were developed through writing beforehand, but most of the actual wording of the ways that they would express those ideas was developed by the actors. So specifically, I think the first scene where the father is really berating the son, Sangwa, really the idea in that scene was just that he would be very critical and would express to him this extreme disappointment and anger towards him that he had left him, that he had kind of shirked his responsibility. But in terms of how he actually expressed that, and in certain ways the extremity with which he expressed that was something that he improvised himself.
Sort of the same process that Larry David uses in Curb Your Enthusiasm, right?
Somewhat, yeah, yeah.
Do we have another question?
Yes, house left, over here.
Hi, I want to tell you guys that I really enjoyed your film. I'm here.
Okay.
Here. And I actually wanted to ask if Jenny could answer this question since she hasn't had a chance to talk yet. But the question is for everybody. You said that you weren't sure, Isaac, how close to Africa you got, and this isn't a follow-up to the comment Nate made. I was wondering if the actors have seen the film, if other Rwandans have seen the film, and what their reaction to the film was.
Yes, they have seen the film. In fact, the actors, the two main actors were able to come to Cannes with us, which is where it premiered. It was a wonderful experience, and that, I think, has been the most encouraging for us, is to have such a great response. It's been shown to the Parliament and shown on TV, and yeah, and definitely all of the actors and the cast and crew have seen it. And so if we have any authenticity, that's been kind of a good response. So I just wanted to add, I think part of what helped is that we were there teaching for so long before. So we stayed at housing at the edge of town. We didn't stay like at the general tourist hotel. So it was quite a wonderful experience, and I don't think Isaac and Sam give themselves credit for what great listeners they are. A lot of the directing process, they had these key ideas, but then they would listen to people and then integrate the stories that they heard, and I think that added to the authenticity of the film. And also, this is why I think that that our cast and crew and also the Rwandan government, why it's had such a good response, why people kind of feel more than any other film that it's Rwandan film and not just an American film. It's a Rwandan film. So.
Stage left underneath the balcony here.
Okay.
I think that's me. Had this been a Western film, I would have thought it's me, creating some intrigue for the audience to figure out if it was a homosexual relationship between Sangwa and Gabo. But I bet that wasn't it, and I wonder if those displays of affection and relationship are born of a culture of war orphans and children on their own. And I would just like to give you a chance to tell us about that.
Do you want me to? It's interesting that, yeah, we've had that question a number of times. Culturally in Rwanda, men are more affectionate with one another. So, I coming from a Korean American background, I'm not used to hugging so much. Maybe I don't know if you would agree. Yeah. Yeah, we didn't hug backstage, I must say. We can try that later. No, yeah, but when you're there, it's very affectionate, always holding hands with each other, arm around each other. If you're taking naps, sleeping on each other's shoulders and things. So I think maybe in the West that's generated that response. But at the same time, I haven't really discouraged that sort of response either, because some people have, I think we've had some audience members who've gotten a lot out of the film thinking that is their relationship, and perhaps there are ways in which they can relate to the film in that way. So,
I mean, you really allow the audience to bring their own sensibilities and their own narratives to the story that we're watching, or the film that we're watching, and I think that's a really good thing. So I think we have time for a couple more questions.
Balcony.
This question is for Jenny. Particularly, first of all, I enjoyed the film immensely. It was a beautiful, beautifully crafted film. But since the three of you lived actually in Rwanda, this story, as beautiful as it is told from pretty much a male perspective. And so the only female really has, her behavior would be transcultural in receiving her child back into her home. So what I'm wondering is, actually in Rwanda, what is the female sentiment toward peace, and is there any women in the country who are working toward a peaceful relationship within the country?
This isn't necessarily a woman specific, but in Rwanda, because they have this very horrific events in so recent history, that the people are making a very, very conscious effort, like for peace. Like, for example, Isaac said it's now taboo to speak which ethnic tribe you are. It's a very conscious, concerted effort towards peace, and I think women cross-culturally tend to be more of the peacemakers, where it's okay for us to approach each other and make peace, whereas men cross-culturally sometimes have this need to be the protectors, I guess. But just a Rwandan, and all the Rwandese people in general are working. It's a very cultural, you can feel it as a cultural thing, a very conscious effort for peace. Sorry, I don't know if that answered your question.
One more question, and then we have to go.
She took my question. Oh, she took your question? Well, I was going to ask about the one.
Another question? Is there a question?
Stage left,
okay.
Please. Stage left.
Hello. Hi. I was wondering, I think one of the most impressive parts of the movie is the pace of everything, the slowness, and I'd like you to comment on that. It built tension. It made it a real gripper.
I have to admit I like very slow films, so I think that did influence. There are many influences to that. One is that, yeah, I do enjoy slow films, maybe because I enjoy the act of contemplating. The other thing is, I admit when I came back with the film that it was much slower than I remember when I was shooting it. And I think because I settled into that lifestyle there, which was very slow and deliberate. But yeah, I don't like the idea. I didn't like the idea of making a film that would be too fast, and maybe it wouldn't root you into the location as much. I do think there is an intensity to slowness. So.
Yeah, and also the way you shot the film in a series of extended shots. I mean, very little was done in editing, right? It was done in performance.
Right. And
I think that contributes to allowing us to realize that what we're seeing is actually happening, and it's not artifice. And anyhow, we once more, a big hand of applause for these wonderful filmmakers, and thank you for coming.
If you would like to ask a question afterwards, we'll be around in the back. So if there is anyone who didn't get a chance, please come up to us. Thank you very much.
Okay.